Alright, so you guys might remember Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood's Kraken lawsuit that they claimed was going to overturn the election. Surprise, it didn't. But it was not only thrown out of court incredibly quickly, but they've been sanctioned for this lawsuit. This lawsuit was so bad that they are both being fined and given mandatory 12 hours of law training. They have to sit in a classroom for 12 hours and be taught about election law. Variegated with a link that I'll check out.
So there's the Star of David, and it says never again is now. What does that mean?
Whatever happened back in World War II, it was never going to happen again, but it's happening now.
Why are you on the floor?
When can I check the P.O. box? Good question. Hopefully soon.
Do you think that they're gonna line us?
I've been thinking about getting a second one that's just here, because I'm an hour and a half away from Jake now, where the other P.O. box is. So I've been thinking about getting my own, so if you guys want to send just me something and I can do my own unboxings, I don't know. I gotta think about it. Toxoplasmane, thanks for following, and Nimble Parsley, thanks for following. Opinion and order. This lawsuit represents a historic and profound abuse of the judicial process. It is one thing to take on the charge of vindicating rights associated with an alleged fraudulent election. It is another to take on the charge of deceiving a federal court and the American people into believing that rights were infringed, without regard to whether any laws or rights were in fact violated. This is what happened here. Now, this judge is pretty scathing. Individuals may have a right, within certain bounds, to disseminate allegations of fraud unsupported by law or fact in the public sphere, but attorneys cannot exploit their privilege and access to the judicial process to do the same. And when an attorney has done so, sanctions are in order. Here's why. America's civil litigation system affords individuals the privilege to file a lawsuit to allege a violation of law. Individuals, however, must litigate within the established parameters for filing a claim. Such parameters are set forth in statutes, rules of civil procedure, local court rules, and professional rules of responsibility and ethics. Every attorney who files a claim on behalf of a client is charged with the obligation to know these statutes and rules, as well as law allegedly violated. Specifically, attorneys have an obligation to the judiciary, their profession, and the public to conduct some degree of due diligence before presenting allegations as truth, to advance only tenable claims, and to proceed with a lawsuit in good faith and based on a proper purpose. Attorneys also have an obligation to dismiss a lawsuit when it becomes clear that the requested relief is unavailable. This matter comes before the court upon allegations that plaintiff's counsel did none of these things. To be clear, for the purpose of the pending sanctions motions, the court is neither being asked to decide, nor has it decided whether there was fraud in the 2020 presidential election in the state of Michigan. Rather, the question before the court is whether plaintiff's attorney engaged in litigation practices that are abusive and in turn sanctionable. The short answer is yes. The attorneys who filed the instant lawsuit abused the well-established rules available to the litigation process by proffering claims not backed by law. Proffering claims not backed by evidence, but instead speculation, conjecture, and unwarranted suspicion, proffering factual allegations and claims without engaging in the required pre-filing inquiry, and dragging out the proceedings even after they acknowledged that it was too late to attain relief sought. And this case was never about fraud. It was about undermining the people's faith in our democracy and debasing the judicial process doing so. While there are many arenas, including print, television, and social media, where protestations, conjecture, speculation may be advanced, such as expressions, are neither permitted nor welcome in a court of law. And while we as a country pride ourselves on the freedoms embodied within the First Amendment, it is well established that an attorney's freedom of speech is circumscribed upon, quote, entering the courtroom. Indeed, attorneys take an oath to uphold and honor our legal system. The sanctity of both the courtroom and the litigation process are presented only when or rather preserved only when the attorneys adhere to this oath and follow the rules, and only when the courts impose sanctions when attorneys do not. And, despite the haze of confusion, commotion, and chaos counsel intentionally attempted to create by filing this lawsuit, one thing is perfectly clear. Plaintiffs' attorneys have scoured their oath, or rather scorned their oath, flouted the rules, and attempted to undermine the integrity of the judiciary along the way. Wow. That's bad. As such, the court is duty-bound to grant the motions for sanction filed by defendants and intervenor defendants, and is imposing sanctions pursuant to Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure and its own inherent authority. On November 30th, 2020, a record 5.5 million Michigan residents voted in the presidential election, resulting in then-former Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr. securing over 150,000 more votes than then-President Donald J. Trump. By the following evening, President Biden had been declared the winner in the state. Even though Michigan law establishes an extensive procedure for challenging elections, see, and there's a citation, plaintiffs did not avail themselves to those procedures as they conceded at the July 12, 2021 motion hearing before this court. Instead, at 11:48 p.m. on November 25, 2020, the eve of Thanksgiving holiday, plaintiffs, registered Michigan voters, and nominees of the Republican Party to be presidential electors on behalf of the Senate filed the current lawsuit against Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan Secretary of State Jacqueline Benson, and the Michigan Board of State canvassers. The following lawyers electronically signed the pleading: Sidney Powell, Scott Hagerstrom, and Gregory J. Roll. The complaint listed the following attorneys as of counsel: Emily Newman, Julia Haller, Lynn Wood, and Howard Kleinhendler. On November 29th, a Sunday, plaintiff filed inter alia an amended complaint and an emergency motion for declaratory emergency and permanent injunctive relief and memorandum in support thereof. Motion for injunctive relief. The same attorneys who electronically signed or were listed as of counsel on the initial complaint signed or were listed on the amended pleading. The amended pleading also listed Brandon Johnson as additional of counsel. In their amended complaint, plaintiffs allege 3 claims pursuant to 42 U.S.C. 1983. Violations of Count 1, the Elections and Electors Clauses, Count 2, the 14th Amendment Equal Protections Clause, and Count 3, the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause. Under Count 4, plaintiffs asserted violations of the Michigan Election Code. Underlying plaintiffs' claims were their contentions that defendants 1. Failed to administer the November 3rd, 2020 election in compliance with the manner prescribed by the Michigan Legislature and the Michigan Election Code. And 2. Committed a scheme and artifice to fraudulently and illegally manipulate the vote count to make certain the election of Joseph Biden as President of the United States. Plaintiffs asserted that their claims were supported by, quote, the affidavits of dozens of eyewitnesses and the statistical anomalies and mathematical impossibilities detailed in the affidavits of expert witnesses. Again, there's those affidavits that we talked about when the initial lawsuit was filed. They're basically garbage that they just got from anyone they could get. They got a bunch of right-wingers who were working near or with the elections and were like, do you want to say anything suspicious happened? And they solicited a bunch of affidavits that went nowhere. Surprise. Plaintiffs attached hundreds of pages as exhibits in their pleadings, some of which included affidavits from individuals and reports from purported experts. Most of these affidavits had been submitted by different lawyers in prior Michigan lawsuits challenging the 2020 presidential election. The other lawsuits include Costantino versus City of Detroit, and then it lists some other ones. Plaintiffs cited these materials in support of the factual allegations and other amended complaint and motion for injunctive relief. Plaintiffs asked the court to inter alia decertify the election results and order defendants to, quote, transfer certified election results that the state of quote, to transmit certified election results that state the President Donald Trump is the winner of the election. So they were asking for them to just be like, just judge. Tell them they have to say Donald Trump won Michigan, even though he didn't. Nick says, due diligence, motherfuckers. Do they speak it? Plaintiffs maintained this court had to issue this relief by December 8th, 2020, because on that date the results of the election would be considered conclusive. That was the day, was it December 8th? I think, December, oh, that's when the Electoral College voted, December 8th. Took me a second, sorry. But, excuse me, throat's getting real dry. By December 1st, motions to intervene had been filed by the city of Detroit, Detroit residents, and Michigan voter Robert Davis, and the Democratic National Committee and Michigan Democratic Party and Democratic Party. As of that date, however, plaintiffs had not yet served defendants with the pleadings or the motion for injunctive relief. Thus, on December 1st, the court entered a text-only order to hasten plaintiffs' action to bring defendants into the case and enable the court to address plaintiffs' pending motions. Plaintiffs served defendants on December 1st, and the court thereafter granted the motions to intervene and entered an expedited briefing scheduled with respect to plaintiffs' motion for injunctive relief. On December 7th, the court issued an opinion and order denying plaintiffs' motion and thereby declining to grant plaintiffs the relief they wanted, which the court noted was, quote, stunning in its scope and breathtaking in its reach, as it sought to disenfranchise the votes of more than 5.5 million Michigan citizens who participated in the 2020 election. I believe we read that ruling when that came out, too. Basically, this is when the case got thrown out. The court concluded that plaintiffs' lawsuit was subject to dismissal based on any one of the several legal theories. 1, their claims were barred by the 11th Amendment immunity. 2, their claims were barred under the doctrine of latches. Is it latches or lashes? Lashes? Latches. I always get that wrong. I know I have some lawyers who watch. Muddy says, oh no, my pain meds are wearing off and I can't take any more today. At least I still have dumbasses to laugh at. Thank you, Hannah. Of course. They lacked standing. They lacked standing. 4, their claims were moot. And 5, abstention was appropriate under the doctrine set forth in Colorado River Water Conservation District versus United States. But the court also concluded that the plaintiffs were not likely to succeed on the merits of their claims. Latches? Okay. Thank you, Nick. As to plaintiffs' claim that defendants violated the Elections and Electors Clause by deviating from the requirements of the Michigan Election Code, the court pointed out that the plaintiffs failed to, quote, explain how or why such violations of state election procedures automatically amount to violations of the clause. And case law did not support plaintiffs' attempt to expand the Constitution that far. Thus, the court found plaintiffs' Election and Electors Clause claim was, quote, in fact, a state law claim disguised as a federal claim. With respect to plaintiffs' attempt to establish an equal protection claim based on the theory that defendants engaged in tactics to, among other things, switch votes for former President Trump to votes for President Biden, the court found the allegation to be based on nothing more than a belief, conjecture, and speculation rather than fact. As to the due process claim, the court noted that plaintiffs abandoned it. The day after the court issued its decision, attorney Stephanie Lynn Juntila, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, entered her appearance in this matter and filed a notice of appeal to the Federal Circuit on behalf of the plaintiffs. The notice was updated on December 10th to reflect the proper appellate court. On December 11th, Sidney Powell, Stephanie, that lady whose name I'm butchering, I'm sorry, and Howard Kleinhendler filed a petition for writ of oh god, I know how to pronounce this, I've pronounced it before. Certiorari, this word, help me out, lawyers. A writ of certiorari. Can you tell I'm not a lawyer? Anyway, in the United States Supreme Court, in the petition, when urging immediate Supreme Court review, plaintiffs wrote, once the electoral votes are cast, subsequent relief would be pointless. Don't laugh at me, Kath. On December 15th, 2020, the city served a letter, safe harbor letter, and motion, safe harbor motion, on plaintiffs' attorneys, threatening sanctions pursuant to Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Specifically, counsel for the city sent safe harbor letter and safe harbor motion via electronic mail and first-class mail to Sidney Powell, Gregory Roll, Stephanie Lynn, Scott Hagerstrom, Lynn Wood, and Howard Kleinhandler. Certiorari. It's an order asking the Supreme Court to immediately look at their thing. God damn it, lawyers. Speak English. Ooh, look at me. I'm part of a profession that still uses Latin. What are you, the Catholic Church? Seriously, though, I'm sorry. In the meantime, the Supreme Court did not rule on plaintiff's petition for writ of... Oh, there's the word again. That's a shame. Certer eori. Certer erich. Sir Rari. I gotta throw this in there. Every time you guys start thinking I might be smart, I gotta correct you. I'm definitely not. Anyway. On December 22nd, Davis filed a motion seeking sanctions against plaintiffs and their counsel pursuant to the court's inherent authority. On the same day, motions to dismiss were filed by the defendants. The city's motion to dismiss included 4 paragraphs discussing why plaintiffs and plaintiffs' counsel should be sanctioned pursuant to that. And all 3 motions to dismiss reflected that concurrence had been sought but not obtained from plaintiffs' counsel. Plaintiffs' response to Davis' sanctions motion was due by January 5th, and their response to the motion was to dismiss were due on January 12th. On January 3rd, plaintiffs filed a motion seeking an extension of time to respond to Davis' sanction motion, citing counsel's current assignments and the need for more time to prepare a response. The court granted plaintiffs' response. Blackwing Hecate with 30 bits says, Sir She Orari. Yeah, I'm not gonna remember that. No. Sir She Orari. Sir She Orari. Fun fact, in high school, I got voted. There are 2 people who were voted most likely to go into politics. Me, who now does this for a living, and one of my best friends at the time, Billy, and she became a lawyer. So. But how many Twitch followers does she have, am I right? Can we time Hannah out? I wish. Someone else want to take over the stream for a little while? Anyone but Daddy Sume. Lupine can't speak English. On January 14th, plaintiffs filed what was docketed as a response to all 3 pending motions to dismiss, but the single response brief addressed only... Oh, speaking of which, this is my ADHD acting up. I don't know if I let you guys know. The issues I was having with the court name change documents that I needed, it's all set. So on the 30th, I should be able to go in, get my court appearance done, and I should officially have my name changed. So, cool. Daddy Sume says, The Kraken has been stonified and defeated by angry judge. Okay, I'm just going to skip ahead to the next section. Sanction motions. The state defendants and intervener defendants... Blah, 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 blah. The state defendants seek sanctions against plaintiffs' counsel under 1927, or alternatively the court's inherent authority. The state defendants contend that the sanctions are appropriate pursuant to 1927 for 2 reasons. First, plaintiffs' counsel unreasonably and vexatiously multiplied the proceedings in this litigation by failing to dismiss the case when their claims became moot, which plainly occurred upon the vote of Michigan's electors on December 14th, if not earlier. Counsel knew or should have known that their legal claims were frivolous, but the counsel pursued them nonetheless, even after the court's opinion, concluding that the plaintiffs were unlikely to succeed on the merits of their claims for multiple reasons, which included the weakness of their legal claims and the lack of factual support. And the state defendants argue sanctions pursuant to the court's inherent authority are appropriate because plaintiffs' claims were meritless. Their counsel should have known this, and their real motive in filing the suit was for an improper purpose. Basically, they're saying, you should... give these people sanctions because this was not about an actual court filing. They were using this for a political purpose. That's just the city of Detroit also speaking in applicable law. I kind of just want to get to the sanctions part because I think that'll be funny, and then we'll call it a night. Someone who's an actual lawyer will probably go through these and actually know what the fuck's going on. Oh, the Lynn Wood section might be pretty funny, actually. Lynn Wood. At the July 12th hearing, Wood maintained that the court lacked jurisdiction to sanction him because he played no role in drafting the complaint. He signed it. Did not read any of the documents with respect to the complaint. Was not aware of the affidavits attached to it, and did not give permission for his name to be specifically included in this action. When the court asked Wood if he gave permission to have his name included in the pleading briefs, Wood answered, quote, I do not specifically recall being asked about the Michigan complaint, but I had generally indicated to Sidney Powell that if she needed a quote-unquote trial lawyer, that I would certainly be willing and available to help her. In this case, obviously my name was included. My experience or my skills apparently were never needed, so I didn't have any involvement in it. Would I have been objected to be included by name? I don't believe so. He's basically admitting I didn't read any of the arguments, but I kind of let him put my name on it. Which you're not supposed to do. The court then asked Wood if he gave Powell permission to include his name on the filings in this matter, to which he responded, I didn't object to it, but I did not know. I actually did not know at the time that my name was going to be included. But I certainly told Miss Powell in discussions that I would help her if she needed me in any of these cases, and in this particular matter, apparently I was never needed, so I didn't have anything to do with it. Wood, then being denied, served with the motion for sanctions and stated that he was present only at the hearing because the court required him to be there. I'm just here so I don't get fined. According to Wood, my audience isn't going to get a sports reference. That was a poor choice. According to Wood, he only discovered that he had been included as a counsel for plaintiffs in this matter when he saw a newspaper article about the sanctions motion. I didn't receive any notice about this until I saw something in the newspaper about being sanctioned. When the court turned to Powell and asked whether she told Wood his name was being placed on the pleading, Powell first answered, my view, Your Honor, is that I did specifically ask Mr. Lynn Wood for his permission. I can't imagine that I would have put his name on any pleading without understanding that he had given me permission to do that. Powell then suggested that perhaps there was a, quote, misunderstanding between her and Wood, and Kleinhendler did not recall whether he spoke to Wood before Wood's name was included on the pleading. The court does not believe that Wood was unaware of his inclusion as counsel in this case until a newspaper article alerted him to the sanctions motion filed against him, and this is why. First, the city's motion for sanctions was filed on January 5th, 2021. At no time between that date and July 12th hearing did Wood ever notify the court that he had been impermissibly included as counsel for plaintiffs in this action. Almost a month before the motion hearing, the court entered an order requiring each attorney whose name appears on any of the plaintiff's pleadings or briefs to be present at the hearing. Wood still did not submit anything to the court claiming that his name was placed on these filings without his permission. No reasonable attorney is a sticking point here, in my opinion. Bold of you to assume Lynn Wood is a reasonable attorney. Would sit back silently if his or her name were listed as counsel in a case if permission to do so had not been given. Second, Wood is not credible. Ooh, that's in a fucking court document. Oh my god. Second, Wood is not credible. Oh my god. Can you imagine being a lawyer your entire life and then near the end of your career, you get a fucking sanction and in the court document, the court says, second blank is not credible? Oh my god. I feel like that would fucking hurt. He claims that he never served with the city's motion for sanctions. However, counsel for the city represents that the motion was sent to Wood via email and regular mail. Kimberly Hunt, the office manager for the city's attorneys, affirms in an affidavit that she mailed via first-class U.S. mail a copy of the safe harbor letter and the safe harbor motion to Wood, among others, on December 15th, 2020, and no copies were returned as undeliverable. His supplemental brief, in order to put his oath behind his factual More importantly, Wood's social media postings undermine his current assertions, as do his statements in other court proceedings. As discussed during the July 12th hearing, on the day the city emailed copies of the safe harbor letter and safe harbor motion to plaintiff's counsel, Wood tweeted a link to an article containing a copy of the motion. What an idiot. Stating, when you get falsely accused by the likes of David Fink and Mark Elias, ellipses, in a propaganda rag like Law and Crime, you smile because you know you are over the target and the enemy is running scared. Oh, that was stupid of him. Let me see if Sidney Powell has their own section. like I said a while ago, I joined Telegram just so I could keep an eye on some of the crazier QAnon people like Lynn Wood. And that dude, I get notifications on my phone on average twice an hour that Lynn Wood is like, I don't know what you call tweeting on Telegram, but if it's a tweet, I'm a Twitter person. Every time he shoots off a fucking Telegram post, it's twice an hour. It's crazy, and it's always the craziest fucking vitriolic, angry conspiracy shit. It's bonkers. All right, just get to the sanctions. I want to see the specific wording. Council's failure to present any evidentiary support for factual assertions. Assertions. Why do we keep saying assertions when it's assertions? What's wrong with my brain? Plaintiff's counsel failed to present any evidence to support their allegation of illegal double voting. To support this factual assertion, plaintiff pointed to a single piece of, quote, evidence, the affidavit of Jesse Jacob. That affidavit states in part, quote, I observed a large number of people who came into the satellite location to vote in person, but they had already applied for an absentee ballot. They're allowed to do that. Fun fact. In Michigan, it's differing by state, but if you apply for an absentee ballot and then the day of the election comes, you can still show up to the polling place. You just have to be like, hey, I applied for an absentee ballot, but I'd rather do it in person. I'm here, and they'll just do that, and it's fine. It's not an issue. That's legal. Fun fact. Emphasis added. Of course, applying for an absentee ballot is not evidence that someone voted via an absentee ballot, and when the court highlighted this lack of evidence as to double voting during the hearing, plaintiff's counsel responded, quote, I think there's inferences that can be drawn, and it should not shock this court that somebody could show up after having asked for an absentee ballot and then shown up to vote again. And then they get arrested if they do that. That's illegal. The system pings that and goes, oh, there's 2 sets of votes from this person. Let's go get them. It does not shock the court that a Michigan resident can request an absentee ballot and thereafter decide to vote in person. Indeed, Michigan law says that voters can. Quote, an absent voter may vote in person within his or her precinct at an election, notwithstanding that he or she applies for an absentee voter ballot and the ballot is mailed or otherwise delivered to the absent voter by the clerk. If, before voting in person, the absentee voter returns the absentee voter ballot, but the court is concerned that plaintiff's attorneys believe that a Michigan resident's choice to do so serves as a circumstantial evidence that the Michigan resident, quote, double voted. It does not. Inferences must be reasonable, and come from facts proven, not speculation or conjecture. Plaintiff's counsel presented affidavits that were based on conjecture, speculation, and guesswork to support the allegation that, quote, unsecured ballots arrived at the TCF Center loading garage, not in sealed ballot boxes, without any chain of custody and without envelopes after 8 p.m. Election Day deadline, end quote. Plaintiff's, quote, affidavit of Matt Scientar, which is a masterclass on making conjectural leaps and bounds. Rubble with 95-bit says, this is both not surprising and frustrating, and there's a link. Attorney for Alabama's Republican governor indicted for soliciting a child by computer for sexual acts. Shocking. Hydrate. So here's a quote from the affidavit, which the court says is a masterclass on making conjectural leaps and bounds. The afternoon following the election, as I was taking my normal dog walk mid-afternoon, I witnessed a dark van pull into the small post office located in downtown Plymouth, Michigan. I witnessed a young couple pull into the parking lot and proceed to exit their van. No markings. Do you expect them to have on the side, we have ballots in this truck? That seems dangerous. And open up the back hatch and proceed to take 3 to 4 very large clear plastic bags and walk them over to a running USPS vehicle that appeared as if it was waiting for them. There was no interaction between the couple and any USPS employee, which I felt was very odd. They did not walk inside the post office like a normal customer to drop off mail. It was if the postal worker was told to meet and stand by until these large bags arrived. The bags were clear plastic with markings in black on the bag, and on the inside of these clear bags was another plastic bag that was not clear, could not see what was inside. There were what looked like a black security zip tie on each bag, as if it were tamper-evident type of device to secure the bag. By the time I realized I should have taken pictures of the bags once I noticed this looked odd, they had taken off. I straight up just don't think this one happened. I think this guy just committed perjury. The other oddity was that the appearance of the couple after the drop, they were smiling and laughing at one another. People enjoying themselves on election day? Conspiracy! What I witnessed and considered that what could be in those bags could be ballots going to the TCF Center or coming from the TCF Center. Oh my god. I saw people with bags at a post office. What the fuck? When the courts asked plaintiff's attorney how any of them, as officers of the court, could present this affidavit as factual support of anything alleged in their pleadings and motion for injunctive relief, counsel emphatically argued that, quote, the witness is setting forth exactly what he observed and the information that he bases it on. He saw these plastic bags. It is a true affidavit. Wasn't one of the evidences a food truck bringing food to the poll workers? Yes, it was. One of the affidavits, I believe, or at the very least one of the accusations made, turned out to be a catering truck that was bringing food to the poll workers. And they're like, what are they bringing in that truck? Food. The volunteers, who are fucking angels for dealing with all this shit, needed food. The court accepts that the affidavit is true and that Siantar memorialized what he saw at the time, but the court cannot find it reasonable to assert, as plaintiff's attorneys do, that this, quote, shows fraud. Absolutely nothing about this affidavit supports the allegation that ballots were delivered to the TCF Center after the election day deadline. And even if the court entertained the assertion of plaintiff's counsel that this affidavit is, quote, is one piece of a pattern, end quote, reflecting fraud or defendants' violations of Michigan election laws, this would be a picture with many holes. This is because a document containing the lengthy musings of one dog walker after encountering a, quote, smiling, laughing couple delivering bags of unidentified items in no way serves as evidence that the state laws were violated or that fraud occurred. During the hearing, plaintiff's counsel further asserted that, quote, we don't typically rewrite what an affidavit says. That is good. But pursuant to their duties as officers of the court, attorneys typically do not offer factual allegations that have no hope of passing as evidentiary support at any stage of the litigation. Basically, why did you even file this? This can't be used for evidence for anything. What are you doing? To support the allegations that, like, they didn't do their due diligence is basically the issue, in any way, shape, or form. They just threw everything at the wall and hoped something stuck. To support the allegations that defendants fraudulently added tens of thousands of new ballots to the qualified voter file on November 4th, 2020, all or nearly all of which were votes for Joe Biden, plaintiffs quote the affidavit of Melissa Carone. Oh, is that the drunk lady? Who was like, I signed my name. Do you? Which describe, quote, facts that demonstrate no misconduct or malfeasance and amount to no more than strained and disjointed innuendo of something sinister. Quote, there was, I love, my favorite thing in, like, court documents is when someone says something grammatically incorrect and they just have to put the sick there because it's like, we're saying this verbatim. We're not dumb. This person's dumb. I'm going to read this in her voice. There was 2 vans that pulled into the garage of the counting room on the day shift and one on the night shift. These vans were apparently bringing food into the building. I never saw any food coming out of these vans. Coincidentally, it was announced on the news that Michigan had discovered over 100,000 more ballots Not even 2 hours after the Vance left. So that's the one where it's food. Nick says, Melissa Carope. The amended complaint calls for a, quote, illegal vote dump, but nothing described by Carone connects the Vans to any ballots. Nothing connects the illusory ballots to President Biden, and nothing connects the illusory votes for President Biden to the 100,000 ballots coincidentally announced on the news as, quote, discovered in Michigan. Yet not a single member of plaintiff's legal team spoke with Carone to fill in these speculated filled gaps before using her affidavit to support the allegation that tens of thousands of votes for President Biden were fraudulently added. It's also notable that when the court asked plaintiff's counsel whether an affidavit's observation of a self-described coincidence serves as evidentiary support for the allegation that a, quote, illegal vote dump occurred, plaintiff's counsel appeared to say that it was okay in this case because Ramslin, quote, relied on the Carone affidavit for his statistical analysis, and an expert can rely on hearsay. Okay, to my understanding, and bear in mind this understanding comes from literally watching fucking Legal. Not a lawyer. Don't take what I say as if it's fact. I'm just trying to explain what may be going on here. To my understanding, expert witnesses have a lot more leeway in what they are allowed to opine upon, in what they are allowed to have conjecture upon. I don't know if hearsay evidence. There are a lot of hearsay exceptions to my knowledge, but I don't know if one of them is an expert is allowed to opine upon some sort of hearsay evidence, air quote. I don't know. But it's a stupid thing because they're saying because their expert witness, air quotes, used her bullshit foundless claim of coincidence in his statistical analysis, that it doesn't throw suspicion on his analysis, but instead somehow retroactively makes her allegations more valid, even though it's entirely based on the fact that she just said, that seems like a coincidence. Like, that's not how that works. But the problem with the Carone affidavit does not concern hearsay, it concerns conjecture, and surely plaintiff's attorney cannot fail to reasonably inquire into an affidavit's speculative statements and thereafter escape their duty to stop and think before making factual allegations based on the statement simply because their expert did the same. Basically, your expert sucks. It doesn't mean you get to suck. Plaintiff's counsel further emphasized that if Carone said things that don't turn out to be entirely accurate, that can be discovered through the process that this court is very familiar with. The court assumes the attorneys are referencing the discovery process, but here's the snag. Plaintiffs are not entitled to rely upon the discovery process to mine for evidence that never existed in the first instance. And then citation, Goldman versus Barrett. Speculation, coincidence, and innuendo could never amount to evidence of an illegal vote dump, much less anything else. It goes on to point out where they, didn't have evidence for their bullshit claims. Again, I want to be done, so I'm just going to skip to the actual, shit that has to happen to them. There's sanctions imposed. Conclusion. In summary, the court concludes that plaintiff's counsel filed this lawsuit in bad faith and for improper purpose. Further, they presented pleadings that, one, were not, quote, warranted by the existing law or by a non-frivolous argument for extending, modifying, or reversing existing laws or establishing new law, and two, contained factual contentions lacking evidentiary support or likely to have evidentiary support. Finally, by failing to voluntarily dismiss this lawsuit on the date plaintiff's counsel acknowledged it would be moot, and thereby necessitating the filing of motions to dismiss, plaintiff's attorneys unreasonably and vexatiously multiplied the proceedings. For these readings, and not for any conduct that occurred on appeal, The court, I like that they put that line in there, I assume, because they thought they were going to try and, like, you can't do this, it's because we were trying to appeal. That way, I mean, they're still going to say it's because we tried to appeal things, but... Daddy Sume says, I would like to call Gina Carano as an expert witness. Is it a case on how to act badly? And destroy your own career? For these reasons, the court holds that sanctions against plaintiffs' counsel are warranted under Rule 11, and the court's inherent authority. Sanctions are required to deter the filing of future frivolous lawsuits designed primarily to spread the narrative that our election processes are rigged and our democratic institutions cannot be trusted. Notably, many people have latched onto this narrative, citing as proof counsel's submission in this case. The narrative may have originated or been repeated by former President Trump, and it may be one that many Americans, quote, share. However, that neither renders it true nor justifies counsel's exploitation of the courts to further spread it. Whether sanctions should be awarded to intervener defendants, plaintiffs do not challenge the court's power to award sanctions to intervener defendants. However, plaintiff maintains that under 1927, a party seeking sanctions has a duty to mitigate their damages. According to plaintiffs, the city and Davis did just the opposite by intervening in this lawsuit, where they were not being sued, and plaintiffs assert had no necessary interest to protect. The court already concluded, however, that Davis and the city possess a substantial legal interest in this matter, warranting their intervention, either as a matter of right or permissibility. Of course, every intervener could mitigate its damage by staying out of a lawsuit. However, choosing to step in does not on its own mean parties cannot seek an award of sanctions when they prevail in protecting their interests. Despite this, the court declines to award sanctions to Davis because he did not substantially contribute to the resolution of the issue in the case. As the court noted in its opinion denying Davis's request to intervene as of right, the state defendants, the DNC, MDP, and the city aimed to protect the interests of all Wayne County voters, including Davis. Although the court grants Davis's request for permissive intervention, the court noted that its decision was a close call, and that it granted Davis's request only because his intervention would not unduly delay or prejudice the adjudication of the original defendant's rights. In fact, Davis's involvement did more to interfere with than insist the advancement of this litigation. Davis's briefs added little to the discussion, and he often clogged the court's docket with inconsequential requests and wasted the court's limited time with the same. Moreover, despite speaking only twice during the almost 6-hour-long sanctions hearing, Davis's counsel, unlike counsel to every other party to this case, opted not to file any supplementary briefing, presumably because, again, Davis had nothing to contribute. Ultimately, the court refuses to reward Davis for taking the court's time and giving nothing back. Sanctions imposed. This lawsuit should have never been filed. The state defendants and the intervener defendants should never have had to defend it. If plaintiffs' attorneys are not ordered to reimburse the state defendants and the city for the reasonable fees and costs incurred to defend this action, counsel will not be deterred from continuing to abuse the judicial system to publicize their narrative. Moreover, this court has found the plaintiffs' counsel initiated this litigation for improper purpose, rendering this, quote, the unusual circumstance in which awarding attorneys' fees is warranted. So these guys have to pay for the defendant attorney's fees in these cases. They have to pay the state's costs for doing these trials and all that shit. Which is gonna be expensive! I kinda love that. Further, given the deficiencies in the pleadings which claim violations of Michigan election law without a thorough understanding of what the law requires, and the number of failed election challenge lawsuits that plaintiffs' attorneys have filed, the court concludes that the sanctions imposed should include mandatory continuing legal education in the subjects of pleading standards and election law. They have to go back and learn more law. Lastly, the conduct of plaintiffs' counsel, which also constituted violations of the Michigan Rule of Professional Conduct, calls into question their fitness to practice law. This warrants a referral for investigation and possible suspension or disbarment to the appropriate disciplinary authority for every state bar and federal court in which each attorney is admitted. So they're going to send this basically to everywhere that these lawyers are, part of the bar in. And they'll either, if it's It's going to depend on the states and the federal jurisdiction under which they practice law. Some of them are going to suspend them. Some of them will probably not do nothing. Some might get disbarred. I don't know. Pretty fucking fantastic. Accordingly, it is ordered that the motions for sanctions filed by the state defendant and the city of Detroit are granted. The court is granting in part and denying in part Davis's motion for sanctions, in that the court finds sanctions warranted but not award of Davis's reasonable attorney fees or costs. It's further ordered that plaintiff's attorney shall jointly and severally pay the fees and costs incurred by the state defendants in the city of Detroit to defend this action. So again, they have to pay for the state defendants and city of Detroit's costs for this lawsuit, which are probably, because it is a lawsuit, exorbitant. It's further ordered that within 14 days of this opinion and order, the state defendants of city of Detroit shall submit time and expense records specifying for each attorney who performed work on the matter, the date, the hours expended, the nature of the work performed, and where applicable, the attorney's hourly rate. Plaintiff's counsel may submit objections to the requested amount within 14 days of each movement's filing. Oh, I'm sure they will. It's further ordered that plaintiff's attorneys shall each complete at least... This is great. This is so good. This is my favorite part. The money's awesome, and of course the disbarment and suspensions will be fun. But this one, in particular, I think is going to hit them in the ego, and I like that. It's further ordered that plaintiff's attorneys shall each complete at least 12 hours of continuing legal education in the subjects of pleading standards, at least 6 hours total, and election law, at least 6 hours total within 6 months of this decision. Any courses must be offered by a non-partisan organization and must be paid for at the counsel's expense. Within 6 months of this decision, each attorney representing plaintiffs shall file an affidavit in this case describing the content and length of the courses attended to satisfy this requirement. Now, Linwood and Sidney Powell, go take 12 hours of classes on law and come back and write us a little report on what you learned. What are the chances we find out they lied about and never take these classes and they get further sanctioned? Because there's no way Linwood is going to do that shit. Zero. Linwood is a crazy person. Linwood is not going to do that. It's further ordered that the clerk of the court shall send a copy of this decision to the Michigan Attorney Grievance Commission and the appropriate disciplinary authority for the jurisdictions where each attorney is admitted, referring the matter for investigation and possible suspension or disbarment. 1, Sidney Powell, Texas. 2, Linwood, Georgia. His license has already been suspended in Georgia unless he gets a mental health evaluation. I'm not kidding. He's not allowed to practice law in Georgia unless he gets a mental health evaluation, and he said he's absolutely not going to do that. So, 3, Emily Newman. 4, Julia Holler. You get it. It's just listing all the people and where they're going to get the stuff sent to. It is so ordered. Linda Parker, U.S. District Judge. Fuck yeah, Linda. Get it. That's awesome. That's genuinely so awesome. I love it. I love it so much.